Mosaic Q&A. If you've been challenged or wanting to know more about grout, grout sealer, and substrates, then today's video is for you. I'll be answering viewer questions about these specific topics. Let's remove the mystery so you can have confidence and clarity when tackling your next mosaic. Let's get to it. Welcome back, and if you're new here, my name is Julie. And on this channel, we talk about tips, tricks, tools, adhesives, materials, and specific mosaic projects, all to shorten your learning curve when it comes to creating mosaic art. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please consider subscribing. This Q&A video is the third in an ongoing series here on my channel. You guys ask so many great questions, and what we're going to cover today is just a small portion of what I've received. At the time of filming this video, we're in the middle of March, so here in the States we're coming up on spring, and then of course summer is not far behind. So folks are starting to think about dedicating more time to their mosaic work, and in particular, their outdoor mosaics. So I thought it was the perfect time to go over some of these questions and themes that keep coming up throughout the video comments. So whether you're creating mosaics for the indoors or out, there is something for everybody in this video. Let's dive right in. So the first group of questions we're going to cover have to do with grout. You guys asked some great questions, and I love that. There's even a few questions regarding sanded and unsanded grout, and I think you're going to find those especially interesting, especially if you're not familiar with the difference between sanded and unsanded grout and when you want to use them. And if you aren't familiar with grout, I've done a number of videos here on the channel all about how to actually grout, how to seal, how to color your grout in cement-based adhesives, and I'll include a link to the playlist down below in the description so you can check it out. You can access this information if you're on your desktop computer by clicking Show More underneath the video description. And if you're watching on your tablet or your smartphone, you'll want to click the arrow to the right of the video title. So starting us off with our first question is Jay, who asks, can any regular glitter be used with grout, or is it a special glitter? I did a video here on the channel all about craft glitter versus grout glitter. It's a pretty thorough video, so you'll definitely want to check that out. So the short answer is yes, you can use regular glitter, but stick with me here for a second. I have to say that each type interacts with the grout differently. Craft store glitter, which nowadays is usually made of plastic and not metal, will still run the risk of getting scratched up by the grout. But there are other reasons you might want to reconsider using craft store glitter as opposed to grout glitter. So it depends on the look you want for your grout, but also using glitter that's specifically formulated for grout, in my opinion, is the route I would take. And I'll list a few options for you down below in the description. Our next question comes to us from Michelle, who asks, I'm making a color block mosaic and would like to use a lighter gray grout than what I have. Is it okay to mix a linen color grout with the dark gray just to lighten the color? Of course, before I add the water. Absolutely, Michelle. You can definitely change the color of your grout or cement-based adhesive. And yes, you guessed it, I've done a video here on the channel all about the subject, and I show you 3 ways to do it. Now, the method that Michelle is asking about is actually my preferred way, and that is if you're starting with a powder grout, then you're sticking with powder to change the color. Does that make sense? As opposed to adding liquid to the powder grout to change the color. Can it be done? Absolutely. And in the video I just mentioned, I show you 3 ways to do it. But my preferred way is to stick with mixing powders to alter the grout color and then add my liquid, whether that's water or latex additive, to mix it all up. but I go into much more detail in the video I referenced. Our next question comes from Kim, who asks, how do you grout with thin-set mortar? So here in the States, we have a cement-based adhesive called thin-set mortar. Where you are in the world, it'll be called something else, but the common denominator is that it's cement-based. If you want to learn more about it, I'll include a link to a playlist down below in the description. So to grout a mosaic using thin-set mortar, well, you'll just go about grouting it in the same exact way you would if you were using regular grout. There's no difference. Your timetable is the same, your cleaning off method is the same, etc. Now, she didn't ask this, but you might be wondering, why would you grout with thin-set or a cement-based adhesive as opposed to regular grout? For me, sometimes it's because that's what I have readily available, or I might have a lot of it. Or maybe the color works great for the mosaic I'm working on. If I'm making a mosaic for outdoors, I might decide to use it because it's fortified and that's what I want for an outdoor mosaic. And that's not to say you can't fortify regular grout for outdoor mosaics. And I think we have a question coming up that asks about that specifically, so I'll hold off on that for the moment. But to sum it up, if I have a lot of it and I don't want it to go bad, or the color works really well with the mosaic, or even if I need to grout an outdoor mosaic, then yes, I'll consider grouting with thin-set. But this is subjective. Our next question comes from Lisa, who asks, you mentioned latex additive as a way to mix thin-set. Can you tell me what type of latex additive can be used? Okay, so latex additive is a milky white liquid that you can add to grout or cement-based adhesives to make them fortified. Being fortified helps the grout or cement-based adhesive be more stain resistant, and it gives them more flexibility in resisting moisture absorption, and it improves the color retention. So you would mix up your grout or cement-based adhesive with the latex instead of water. Check the label on your bag or box of grout to see if it's already fortified. As for my favorite brands, I'll list a few down below in the description. Also, check the playlist down below in the description to see different ways you can mix, use, and color your thin-set or cement-based adhesive. There are so many fun ideas and things that you can do with cement-based adhesive in Mosaic. Our next question comes from Kay, who asks, what is your preferred grout for inside or for outside? I prefer to use sanded grout, and we'll talk more about that in the next few questions. But if you're wondering what my favorite brands are, I live in Miami, and so I have Laticrete and Mape and Polyblend readily available, and I'm very happy with the results. Okay, we're sticking with grout, but these next few questions specifically have to do with sanded versus non-sanded or unsanded grout. Our first question in this section comes from Roxy, who asks, is there a difference in using, or when would you use or not use, the sanded or unsanded grout? Would the outcome of the project be affected, or does the use vary on the project materials? Oh, Roxy, there's so much to go through here. This is a very good question. Not that the others aren't good questions, but this is, well, you know what I'm saying. To begin with, sanded grout will always be my go-to when it comes to choosing a grout, and we'll get to why that is in a minute. There are a few factors I would consider when deciding to use sanded versus unsanded grout. The first being, what's the width of the grout line? Sanded grout is, quote, bulkier, if you will, than unsanded. Sanded is cement-based. So a bigger or wider grout line would require sanded grout. Unsanded grout is thinner, not very bulky, and would be ideal if you're filling in a smaller or narrower grout line. And I'm talking less than 1/8 of an inch wide. Really, really thin. And yes, you'll want to think about the tesserae you'll be using. However, don't let that necessarily sway your decision over using sanded versus unsanded. Keep in mind there are ways to get around using sanded grout while still incorporating tesserae into your mosaic that can get scratched up. Now, I briefly discussed this topic in the memory vessel video, and I'll link that video down below in the description. But basically, yes, there are some materials or tesserae that do much better with the unsanded grout. But when it comes down to it, you first want to look at how big is your grout line. Our next question, or comment rather, is from Susanna, who says, I'm still having trouble with non-sanded grout. It takes me a long time to clean up. Unsanded grout is smeary. Not to say that sanded grout is not smeary, but believe it or not, those grains of sand in the sanded grout actually help you clean things up quicker. So my tip on cleaning up non-sanded grout without losing your mind or your patience is to let your grout sit on your mosaic for 10 to 15 minutes and watch it. Don't just, walk away. You want to watch it. And then wipe it off with a damp sponge. And you'll want to wring out your sponge frequently. It could be that you have a lot of grout lines, and so of course it's going to be more smeary as opposed to if you have fewer grout lines. And now we'll move on to a new topic with a few questions, and that is grout sealer. If you aren't familiar with grout sealer, it's a liquid you apply to your grout to make it last longer, whether that's for outdoors or indoors. It also helps your grout from absorbing moisture, it helps your grout resist mold and mildew, and it keeps your grout looking fresh, basically. I've done a video all about grout sealers here on the channel, from the different types, how to apply them, why you would want to apply them, and I'll include a link to that video down below in the description so you can check it out. The first question comes from Jan, who writes, are the coasters a project that you would use a sealer on, as in your flower pot video? Sure, you certainly can. I don't think it would hurt. Glasses that sweat on a mosaic coaster are obviously exposing the grout to moisture. However, I would suggest using a fortified grout for your coaster, which is certainly going to help with the added long-term exposure to moisture. But I like to add an extra layer of protection, so to speak, so I would apply sealer to the grout. Now, if you're using a grout that says you don't need to use a sealer, then you're good to go. But you'll want to check your bag or box of grout to see if it's fortified, for one, and then two, do they claim you don't need to use a sealer? More and more there are grouts coming out on the market where they say you don't need to use a sealer. Our next question comes from Mirnalini, who asks, once I have applied the first coat of sealant, how much time should I wait to wipe it off, and with what? First off, to be clear, you aren't wiping the sealer off your grout. What we want is for that sealer to penetrate the grout or create a coating on the grout, depending on the type that you decide to use. So to answer the first part of her question, of course you want to read the manufacturer's instructions for the sealer. So what I do is I apply the first coat of sealer, I wait about 15 minutes, and if the grout drinks it up, I'll apply a second coat, and I'll wait another 15 minutes. If the grout drinks up the second coat of sealer, then I'll apply a third coat, and so on. So you want to apply the sealer until it puddles and is no longer being absorbed by the grout. Now, don't forget to clean off your tesserae between coats of sealer. I repeat, clean off your tesserae in between applying sealer to your grout. You do not want the sealer to be sitting on your tesserae and drying. Watch the sealer video that I'll link down below in the description, which shows you a few different ways to apply the sealer. And having said that, to answer the second part of her question, you can wipe off your tesserae with an old rag, an old t-shirt, a sponge, or even paper towels. Our next two-part question comes from Kim, who asks, I'm wondering your opinion on sealing an outside mosaic. I am installing one in a hot, dry, and sometimes rainy garden. Would you recommend sealing it? And then she goes on to ask, do you seal your mosaic stepping stones? Hi, Kim. I will answer your question with an emphatic yes. I would strongly suggest sealing outdoor mosaics for the reasons I mentioned a little earlier. Do what you can to extend the life of your grout. Heck, you spend a ton of time on your mosaic from design, tesserae selection, tiling, and grouting. Take the extra 30 to 60 minutes to ensure your grout and mosaic can go the long haul while outside in the elements. And in that answer, I took care of part 2 of her question, which is yes, absolutely, I do seal my stepping stones. Our last group of questions have to do with mosaic substrates. The first 2 questions are from Karen and Janetta. They're asking the same thing basically, so I'll address both in one answer. Regarding Karen's question, which she posted on the Mosaic Boxes video, she asked if I have a box that is already painted, could I glue directly onto that? And Janetta asked, what do you do with an already painted wood surface? So I did a video here on the channel all about how you prep wood surfaces for mosaic. However, that is if you're starting off with unfinished raw wood. For painted surfaces, it's a little tricky. Ideally, you'd want to strip or sand the area where you'll be applying your mosaic. So basically, you want to start from scratch and then go through the process of prepping and sealing the substrate surface. But I know that sometimes there are circumstances which don't or can't allow for that. So yes, if that paint is old or thick, you're taking a risk by tiling over it. But at the very least, you could add some tooth to the substrate surface by taking a knife or razor blade to it and create score lines all the way down to the actual substrate surface. It's better than nothing. But again, if the paint is thick, you're really running a risk of eventually that paint coming away from the substrate. Therefore, your mosaic comes away from the substrate as well. The next question is from Patsy, who asks, I have a 10-inch porcelain cat my mom gave me 45 years ago. Its nose and one ear chipped, so I was wanting to mosaic it. What kind of prep do I need to do, and what glue would work best? Now, I don't know much about her substrate, so we're going to do a covering all of our bases. Sound good? If it's glazed, there's no prep work involved except wiping it down to clean off any potential dust, dirt, or oil. If it's unglazed and somehow painted like a matte finish, I would take a coarse sponge or brush to it to try and get off any paint that might be flaking off. And then as far as the adhesive is concerned, I don't know if she wants this substrate for indoors or outdoors, but there are a couple adhesives that would make things a little easier while tiling curves and such, and will also tolerate being indoors or outdoors. And those adhesives are Epoxy Sculpt, which would be my first choice, or you could go with a cement-based adhesive like thin-set mortar, or even silicone. When you're tiling something like a sculpture or an object, for lack of a better word, you want to use an adhesive that will really work with you. We need a team effort here, right guys? You don't want to feel like you're fighting it as you're tiling. You want to enjoy your tiling. So all 3 of those adhesives I just mentioned will work fine. But, you know, epoxy sculpt is my first choice. I'll include a list down below in the description for all of the items that I mentioned in today's video in case you'd like to check them out. Question of the day, or rather comment of the day. Let me know down in the comments, what would you like to know when it comes to Mosaic? Do you have any challenges? It could even be something like work table, chair. Do you stand? Do you sit? How do you do X, Y, or Z? Let me know what is challenging you or what you're interested in. It could even be something personal. It doesn't matter. But let me know down in the comments what you'd like to know, and maybe your question will appear in the next Q&A video. And also, let me know down in the comments, how do you like these Q&A videos? I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up as it really does help my channel. And subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification so you never miss a single upload. And let me know in the comments if there's something you'd like me to cover in a future video. I'll see you soon. Bye. I don't feel like I'm centered. I know this is like not in the greatest of places, but I can't shift over because, well, if you saw the rest of my studio. Anyways. Let's do this. Bam, 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 bam. It's a very thorough video. Yeah. Anytime you want to get it together, Julie, that would be great. Hoo-wee, hoo-wee. Yes, it is March, and it's been up in the 90s here in Miami. Just hot stuff. Hot. It's gonna be a hot summer. Wow. Down below in the description for nope. Where are we? What are we doing? Where are we? What are we doing? I've lost my place. Ah! That didn't flow very well, so we're gonna have to do it again. See how nicely things flow, Julie, when you just take your time and speak slowly? Okay, let's get back to business here. We are due in a webinar in 20 minutes. Okay, we're doing good. Yay us, woo! If you're looking for more Mosaic inspiration, check out one of these 2 videos, and I'll see you soon. Bye.